Adam Creighton is the American correspondent for the Australian newspaper, and he lends us his time tonight on what's going to be a very big and busy day. We've got the Prime Minister at the White House, currently at the Pentagon. Great man, what is the expectation of what we're going to see today between the Prime Minister and President?
Well, of course, firstly, they've already met in New York, Paul, and I mean, so far the visit has been a great success, I would say, for Australia. I mean, we've got, of course, this news that there'll be nuclear submarines in Australian waters even sooner. Far sooner, 6 to 8 years sooner than we first thought, whether they're UK or US submarines. And the second bit of good news so far is that there seems to be no kind of pushback against the Australia-EU free trade agreement, despite French pressure for that to be the case. The Prime Minister's met various European leaders, and they have shown little indication that they agree with the French so far. So far, a very promising visit. The Prime Minister is meeting the leader of the Democrats in the House of Representatives today, Nancy Pelosi, and of course also further US officials. And that comes ahead of the Quad meetings over Thursday and Friday here.
Now, obviously we know that Boris Johnson and Joe Biden, if they're also in lockstep, they're lockstep on hardcore talking about climate change. At this point, there has been no indication about what the cost of the new arrangement is in terms of our national security and submarines. Is there an expectation that we're hearing anything about them attempting to pressure Australia on net zero? Because Scott Morrison he talks about climate change in all of the speeches. He talks about it as the ambition, but obviously for domestic political concerns, he doesn't want to have to sign up to the stated goal of net zero by 2050.
Well, look, the reality is there probably is going to be some pressure behind the scenes. I mean, certainly President Biden's made a big song and dance about this, and in particular, not just net zero by 2050, but doing a lot more by 2030. In his speech to the UN yesterday, he stressed that. He reminded everyone that the US is going to do far more by 2030. But it is worth actually pointing out there that Congress has to agree, and they haven't agreed yet. But nevertheless, that is the US aspiration. Senator Marise Payne, the Foreign Minister, she talks about net zero, I mean, fairly often in her speeches. So I think it's almost Australian policy. I mean, basically, even if we haven't used a particular phrase or not.
Yeah, and I think that is part of, I think that's the domestic political calculation, which is, look, we've got a deal for 2030. It's Paris. We've signed up to it. It's passed the Parliament. The never, never of 2050. The zealots who say that we must sign it, but the understanding about what the bureaucracy is back here that'll pretend it's 2047. But about how Australia is being positioned in things like what you saw yesterday and what we're going to see in the next couple of days. Joe Biden obviously went through the disaster of how he decided to end Afghanistan, but very much what is being played out this week is him openly talking about trying to form new relationships and new arrangements for the 21st century. And Australia is at the heart of obviously the AUKUS situation and obviously at the Quad as well. So Australia doesn't quite get invited along to the G7, but we're well and truly part of these new ways of defending our own part of the world.
Yeah, look, I think it's fair to say now that Australia's really been elevated internationally in a security sense, and we're kind of far and away the most important US ally, I would say. That's been demonstrated recently, and we're well ahead of Canada and New Zealand. I mean, if you were Canada, you'd have to wonder, why you were left out of the agreement. I mean, of course, you're a lot closer to the US. You're a bigger country, bigger population, and you've got just as much interest in the area. So it's just a reminder, kind of, how important Australia is now to the US. So, look, I think it's been a great, it's been a great couple of weeks for Australia overall. But there's going to be friction over climate change over the next few years for sure. So that's going to be the big sticking point between Australia and the US.
Yeah, agree completely. What else have you garnered in your time in New York?
Well, last night there was a terrific dinner for the 70th anniversary of the ANZUS Treaty. And Dionne Warwick sang. It was fantastic. She's 80 now, and she sang all the classics. It was extraordinary, actually. So it was fantastic. Yeah, down on Wall Street. So that was a great celebration.
Yeah, there's a great doco about her at the moment. So there's a bit of a renaissance in a golden age, dare we say. Thank you so much, Adam. We'll read your stuff in the newspaper. Always great to talk to you on the telly, mate. I know it's a couple of big days ahead, and thanks, thank you for getting up for us. Do appreciate it.